Hello and welcome to the Voice with Action podcast. I am Deb Balico and I am here with Rebecca, who has recently returned from West Africa. Hi, Rebecca.
Hello.
So she's had a couple days to process and think about some of the amazing things that God has been doing in and through teams and what's going on. And so she wanted to share. She got to meet the children that were recently brought back from trafficking and honor their mothers. And so she wants to share some of these stories of some of the amazing things that are going on.
Yeah. So we had two teams in a span of 2 weeks. The teams, we did community meetings, and then we also were at the orphanage safe home. And so there was like lots of activity with those kids and loving on them. Something that stood out to me with one of the meetings is we were able to honor the mothers that have brought back their children from being trafficked in this new village. I had interviewed a couple of the children on my previous trips, and it was just heart-wrenching, their little stories of just how abused they were and traumatized, really. And then their mother or their father shows up to pick them up and says, there's people in our village that will help you if we bring you back. So we're bringing you back. So one was a little boy coming back from a farm, and a little girl that was being used as, they call it a seller, selling things on the street in the main city. Just kind of shocked by their stories. But at the same time, I was wanting to honor these parents who brought back their children in one of these meetings. So we told them, we have a little gift for you. We want to celebrate you parents that have brought back your children this year. We want to pray with you. We really want to celebrate. This is a celebration. And my staff is always telling me, it'll be, it's shameful for them. So we don't know who's going to actually come forward or not. But you can still, offer them to come forward. And so one or two of them trickled forward. And then, there was a few that had brought back children they were from other villages, not that village, and they had walked a couple miles to come to the meeting. And so my staff was weeding through those, because they're like, no, we're just talking about the ones in this village right now, and because we've already honored the other ones and the other ones. So,
and what do you do to honor them?
Yeah, so we give them a gift of rice, and the rice is very expensive right now, and it's their favorite food, but most of them can't afford it. The average wage in these villages are 25 cents a day. And so this is like a luxurious gift of rice, and we get them quite a bit of rice, as a gift. So once we honored the few that came forward, prayed for them, and then we asked them if they could just, go off to the side because that's where the gift was. And when we did that, all of a sudden it was like little ants coming out of the meeting, and they just a huge amount of people swarmed to the gift area where the rice was. And, there's 35 kids there that have come back. Well, I would say out of the 35, there's probably 25 that have come back, and the others are siblings that were at high risk to be sent away because they're in that trafficking family. So we gave all the first ones, a bag of rice and until it ran out. And we said, the ones that came forward get that first rice. And we gave basically each person. So we gave the parents each a bag, the children each a bag. And, they got quite a bit of rice to take home. And then we asked a few if we could interview them off to the side. And I thought they would say no, but they were eager. They wanted to tell their story. These mothers, particularly, there was only one man out of the group, and they did want to tell their stories. And I said, we're going to protect your face. We're going to make sure that you're never shown, your face isn't shown with these interviews. And one lady came out of the group and she says, you can show my face. I'm not ashamed. I want to tell everybody what you have done for us. And I was like, oh, wow. Well, that's wonderful. You're one of, there was probably 15 mothers there. And I says, you're probably the only mother that actually is wanting to share your story, and they don't understand anything about social media, a lot of them, So I was like, it's okay. We will still protect you. We're going to not ever show your face publicly. That's our job, is to make sure you're you're safe, and your children are safe. But it was precious. So each one of them shared their story, and all of them were pretty much the same. Husband or, someone in their family died who was the breadwinner of the home. And they have all these children, they can't feed them. And a neighbor comes over and says, if you send, such and such a way, you'll get this amount of money sent back to you. And so out of desperation, they pick the strongest child and they send that child away. And then, of course, that child's in slavery, the abuse happens. And so what I did is after the parent shared, then I would look at the child that was brought back. And some of these families had 2 and 3 kids that were brought back from slavery. And it's just, those are always the shocking ones too. But I literally said to each of the kids, were you treated well when you were sent away? And they would always shake their head no. And I said, what would happen? And they would always say they were beat severely every day. They never knew why. And they were fearing for their life, And I look at these kids and I still, it's hard to fathom that it's actually, the parents that do this. But when you hear their stories and their head is down as they're saying their stories, I'm like, they felt like there was no other way, for them. And so out of desperation, no hope, no other way in their mind to survive, this is what they do. And so,
and these are real people. I mean, I know you've talked about actually how sobering it is to see their faces and hear their stories, hear their hearts, because these are real people that would not be standing before you if it wasn't for Orphan Relief and Rescue.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's beautiful work. And all of you who support this work, thank you. This literally is saving lives. And I don't know how to even describe the magnitude of just the shock value that I still have on a regular basis. And yet I'm so grateful for each of you who do give so that this can continue. And it literally is saving their lives. And every single one of them will say, I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die. That's kind of the theme of their life. And one little girl had been sent away 5 years ago. And she had been beat every single day for 5 years and thought she was going to die. And I mean, the trauma that she'll have to go through, trauma therapy, is going to be a lot. But yeah, so it is beautiful. It's beautiful work, sobering work. And those stories I'll never get tired of. That's like the tangible thing of what we do. And then the other cool stuff that we do is literally these community meetings where all of these people are being set free from the evil spirits and the demonic realm that they felt no hope to get out of. They didn't know there was even an option to get out of these, having evil spirits tormenting them in their home every day. They didn't know that there's an option that they can literally cast those out in the name of Jesus if they have Jesus in their life. And so that to me was the secondary incredible thing on this trip in particular. But while I was there, you interviewed me, Deb, and I had talked about my bodyguard seeing angels in one of the meetings. And he was prepared physically with all of his, he had a knife, in his anklet. He's got all these weapons, in his waist. And I physically could see that he was protecting us. But then the cool thing was the spiritual part. And I shared last week that I thought he had seen this vision of angels while we were speaking. And I didn't find out till later, because once I come home, I said, okay, I need this in writing because I forget so much with so many things going on. And so he put in writing that whole vision and experience. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I wanted to kind of highlight what actually happened. That was, to me, so cool. So before these teams and before this trip, the Lord woke me up in the middle of the night. And I felt like the Lord was like, I want you to usher in the spirit of worship. And I want it to be with a synthesizer that I knew one of our staff members had, and he plays worship regularly. And
Because
so,
Rebecca, didn't you say that each time you go, the Lord kind of gives you a strategy? Each
yes,
team, each, like last year, the season was to pray over the properties. And the fruit of that was that the chief saw what you were doing and they're like, I understand what they're doing. They are dedicating this land, to God and Jesus. So each trip has a different strategy. So the strategy on this trip, the Lord was showing you to worship.
yeah, so it's always interesting because you're so busy getting ready for these trips. And so I'm just like getting my bags packed, making sure I'm checking off everything on my list that everybody needs. And and then once I get on the plane, I'm praying, okay, God, show me what you want for each of these meetings and what you want for this. But it's interesting when the Lord has something pretty big, he wakes me up ahead of time before the trip is even on its way and alerting me. So yeah, like last year it was, I want you to pray around do prayer walks around every property and dedicate them to me and renounce all the yucky stuff, in the spirit realm that has been on those lands or in those properties. And so this one was the spirit of worship. I want you to usher in the spirit of worship in these meetings. And he showed me exactly who needed to do it, who needed to bring the synthesizer. And before each meeting in the past, we just have had like those bongo drums, and kind of celebratory music as people come in. And we still like do that with the loudspeaker because that's what brings people to the meetings. But then I felt like right before the speaking, we were to do the synthesizer in worship music that was in their language in that village. And so that's what we did. And and then what was also cool is when we were in the vans driving to these, we had the whole team, the Western team in each of these vans that were going. And I just felt like the Lord was like, just worship, just worship. And so we just sang worship songs, as we were driving in. And then we get there and then we sit down. And then I had our staff member play the synthesizer. And it was just like ushering the presence of Jesus. Like it was so like beautiful. And it was mostly in the native language, these worship songs, except the ones that we, sing sometimes in the van that we did English and French and then the native tongue. But so, yeah, so when my bodyguard came up to me at the end of the meeting and said, I want to tell you something. Can your translator, translate? And I said, yes, yes, so he tells me, I I saw angels all over the ceiling, and they were very big angels swirling around this whole ceiling where we are. And he says, I want you to know that we're protected. And I was like, oh, wow, wow. Okay. So what did they look like? I want to know what they look like. And so he's telling me that they, had long robes and their glowing faces. He could tell they were very happy on their faces. He couldn't see details, but he knew they were happy. They had gold crowns. And then he said that he envisioned him in warrior um, armor. And he said he chuckled because it was so beautiful. And he was like, whoa, that's me, whoa, I look pretty good. But he knew that was the angels that were protecting us. And then, I shared last week how I thought it was while we were speaking that he got that. And so when he wrote it down for me, he said that it was actually during the worship time at the beginning. He said that he called it a sleep. He kind of went into a sleep mode, which in America we'd call that a meditative state, where we're just meditating on the Lord. And in that meditated mode with the Lord is when he got the vision of all these angels all over. And he said it was so beautiful. And he just had such peace because he knew that we were protected. And, I was asking myself afterwards, I thought, why did the Lord give him particularly that vision? And I really felt like it was because, we had some disruption stuff in a previous meeting in that same area where some people aren't happy with what we're sharing, about Jesus. And I think for him in particular, this was, he has a huge responsibility. I know he feels it. And so the Lord was showing him, I've got this. You're doing all you can, practically, but the angelic hosts are here as well.
Mhm.
And then the coolest thing is that he continued to sing worship very softly right in back of me as I was praying for others when people had come forward for prayer with our little prayer stations that we had up front. And I, yeah, I just was like, okay, my bodyguard is protecting me
Yeah.
spiritually and physically,
Yeah.
But there's
I,
something about that.
yeah, I
Yeah,
do
go
think
ahead.
when I heard that story, it just immediately made me think of the best way to combat fear is through worship, because it puts the focus not on what we're afraid of, but on God and who God is and thanking God for who he is. And then that peace comes because God is in control. God does have all authority
Yes.
and all power. So it also made me think recently, even in my own home, about 3 months ago, my family, there was just so much animosity, arguing, just this. It was surprising how much was going on. And then my husband started playing worship music, and he's for the last 3 months has been playing worship music. And our home is so peaceful. And I think it's just this invitation of inviting God and his presence into chaos, or
Yes.
fear. And because he's
Yes.
the one who silences fear, his love, his perfect love casts out fear. So
Yeah.
that's what I thought when I heard those stories.
Yeah, when I came home, I was just like, oh my gosh, turn the worship music on, and I've just been worshiping so much more after that experience as well. And I've been in a lot of teachings about worship. I know it ushers in the presence of Jesus and all that, but you get in our busyness and I pray throughout the day. I'm always in a posture of praying, but there's this element that the Lord's just reminding me, worship, worship, worship. Be in a posture of worship, like wake up with worship, go to sleep with worship, have me, yeah, just ushering in the presence of Jesus into my mind, into my spirit. And yeah, so yeah, it's just a different, the Lord's teaching me a lot right
Mm.
now with just reminding me.
Will you also share this, ushering the presence of Jesus into the property across the street from one of our freedom centers?
Yes. So we, yeah, have a piece of property that we know a lot of rituals have happened and a lot of harm has happened to people. And so we acquired that land through a generous donation recently and did another prayer walk around that during this trip and just dedicated it to the Lord. But that property is right across from, where the Lord showed, my bodyguard, the angelic, you know, beings that were all around us. And I thought, what we don't realize in the spirit realm, we can't see it with our naked eye, but the enemy has had such a hold. Like literally, there's territorial spirits that linger there because of the the evil presence that has been there harming people through
Mhm.
these ritualistic things. But the Lord is taking back that land.
Mhm.
And yeah, so anyway, there's so much to unpack.
Mhm.
It'll take me a while to unpack all
Yeah.
the details of
And
all of that. But
and
yeah,
won't
the Lord,
that land that we purchased, the plan for it is to make it an agricultural place, a place that
yes,
literally brings life for people.
yes,
Food,
yes,
sustenance, like even that process of gardening, harvesting. I mean, there's so many parallels
yes,
with
yes,
a piece of property that was meant for death and taking and harm, is being
yes.
replaced with life.
That's right. That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm excited to see what the future holds with that. But literally, God is taking back that land, taking
Mhm.
it back to how he created it to be. And that's to bring life, like he said, not to bring death, to bring life. And the presence of Jesus, it's strategy, with each of these um, trips for me personally, like I said, there is a strategy behind it. We're in a battle, whether we like it or not. We're in a battle. If we're
Mhm.
Christians, if we love Jesus, we're in a spiritual battle that is crazy. And the thing that the Lord reminded me of with the villagers in particular, because the team shares beautiful testimonies in these community meetings. And then I come forward at the end and, I'm to share something, more kind of practical application stuff is what I end up doing because I know the area so well and what they're personally going through. And so, yeah, there's a strategy with each one of them. And the Lord showed me with this particular trip that it's similar to what Paul went into Ephesus. So in Acts 19, Paul went into Ephesus, and the goddess Diana was their protector goddess. And this is all they knew. And so Paul's talking about, they called it the way. And they were like, no, we can't forsake our goddess. That's what protects us. And then there was all of these people who made trinkets and, all these things associated with this goddess that was their livelihood. And so when Paul talked about Jesus and having no other gods, no idol worship, no other gods, they're like, no, we can't worship any other God because we won't be protected. And it's our livelihood as well. So there was all out riots, against Paul because of that. And so here I am looking at this group in front of me, and I know this is all they know. This is what they believe. They believe if they don't worship these gods, these idols, they won't be protected. They wear these beads that protect them, these necklaces that protect them. They put these shell beads around their children's waists, to be protected. And they do all these things. And so we're coming in and sharing Jesus and that he's the almighty, powerful God that can literally set you free from the evil presence in your life. But you have to choose no other God before him. No, none of these gods or goddesses that you have, believe that protect you. But the Lord really kind of gave me some insight as we're going in. And I just had this compassion on them that they don't know any other way. This is all they know. This is all they've been taught. And they've been taught that this is their ancestors' religion, that is what they were born into. That is, if they do any other religion, they're not going to be protected, and their children won't be protected. At the same time, they're being cursed regularly by their neighbor. They're being tormented by these evil spirits and presences in their lives, and they don't know how to reconcile all that. And so, so the Lord just, on one of these meetings, I was sitting in front of them and I'm like, oh, Lord Jesus, I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. And the Lord literally just was like, I want you to look in their eyes. So the team members were giving their testimonies, beautiful testimonies, of their personal experience with the Lord revealing, himself to them and all of that. And then the pastors of these teams would give the salvation message and all that. And then I was to come afterwards. And so on one of these meetings, it's like my mind I just wasn't getting anything that I was to say. And I just felt like, I go, Lord Jesus, please just have something come to my mind. And I felt like the Lord said, I want you to look at their eyes. Just look at their eyes. And so we sit up front as the guests, facing the audience. So I looked at their eyes, and all of a sudden, like I see just this darkness of kind of this hollowness and this hopelessness in their eyes. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Lord, they're a sheep without a master. It's like a sheep without a shepherd, and they just need a touch from you. And then this compassion just wells up in me. And I'm like, they need to know that you can save them. You are the answer. You love them. You love them more than anyone loves them. And then I'm just teary-eyed as I'm staring at their faces. And God just gives me this incredible love for them. And then when it's time for me to get up there, all of a sudden, God just gives me, I want you to give them practical illustrations, what they go through. And so then I bring up a child and a mother, and I kind of do a story with what I know they go through, saying this is just pretend, but I know this is what you go through, and talking about, the evil spirits that are visiting them and tormenting them, and they don't know what else to do, and, tormenting each other. And so then their eyes are locked in because I'm telling a story that is exactly what they're going through. and then I'm giving them the way out. This is how you can get out of this torment. And then all of a sudden they get it, and people want it. They want Jesus. They want the Savior. And so, but yeah, it's the compassion of Jesus that I've realized, we don't have to have this eloquent speech figured out ahead of time. If we don't, it's great if you do, but if you don't, and your mind is just not in it, but you're to do it, I just say, ask the Lord for a strategy, but ask the Lord for his heart for those. Yeah. And that's what broke my heart, is when I literally looked into their eyes and saw the hollowness and the hopelessness. I realized, oh, Jesus, they just need you. They need a touch from you. Yeah.
Yeah. I do think it's really important to ask God, how do you see this person in front of me? Not how do I see them, not my judgment, not my perspective, but Lord, how truly give me your heart for this person. Because then your heart breaks and you all of a sudden have this supernatural compassion, whether that, even bridges cultural differences, you know what I mean? Because you just have, but even the person, so encouraging any of our listener today who might feel either this overwhelming oppression in their own life. We've talked about worship, inviting, just start turning on worship music and inviting God's presence into that despair that you might have. But then also, how would you say too? So let's say, personal despair, we encourage worship. But then what about if you are despairing about the person in front of you? What would you say to a listener?
Yeah, I would, for me, I just ask the Lord to show me, basically to see them through his eyes, like show me your heart for them, because it's not natural for a lot of us to have the heart of Jesus for different ones that we don't understand in front of us, or they do things completely different than we would do. Or, for me, like, I'm like, okay, how could parents sell their kids? Number one, and yet once I look into their eyes, the Lord just gives me this incredible compassion for them. And then I want to hear their story, because when I hear their story, it humanizes the scenario of the why. And it doesn't excuse the behavior, but all of a sudden I have the compassion of Jesus. And so for me, it's literally saying, God, give me your heart, give me your words for this person or situation in front of me. Help me to see them through your eyes. And then you're giving God permission to break your heart for what breaks his. And that's what always surprises me, is that God does do that. And then when I'm getting up there to share with these people that I have a hard time understanding fully what they're going through, all of a sudden God gives me this heart. He breaks my heart. And then when I'm up there sharing, I am so like, I want to see them set free, but I have such a compassion, and they feel that compassion because I've just experienced a taste of Jesus in my life for them. And it rocks you, completely rocks you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope that today's stories and message really encourage someone out there to not lose hope, but press into worship and ask God for his heart for the people around you. So tune in next week. Thank you for listening to the Voice with Action podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, would you consider sharing or subscribing to this podcast and leave a 5-star review to help us grow? If you want to reach us or help us end child trafficking in West Africa, go to Orphan Relief and Rescue.org. That's Orphan Relief and Rescue.org. See you next week.